minutes this year for Chag HaSukkot, Yom Tov Rishon and Shabbos, we talked about the concept of Sukkah. Why do we sit in the Sukkah on Chag HaSukkot?
Yeah, we looked at the pasuk, which seems to say the reason is because we were put in Sukkot when we left Mitzrayim. And we tried to find when exactly did that happen? What Sukkot were we sitting in, when and where, and what does this all mean?
Exactly. And we took a trip throughout the Torah to the different times where we actually do find Am Yisrael sitting in Sukkot. Yes, we find Am Yisrael in Sukkot in the Torah. For some reason, it is being ignored. You really want to take a look at this video. It will definitely change the way you understand the reason we sit in Sukkot during this Chag. Hope you enjoy it. Take a look. Happy days, the days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, preparing for Chag HaSukkot. I love this time of year, especially walking around in Yerushalayim. You can feel the mitzvahs in the air. You can feel the happiness in the air, preparing for this wonderful Chag to come. And this year, Shabbos is first day Sukkot, is Yom Tov Sukkot. And what I want to talk about is this concept of Sukkot, of the Sukkah that we sit in, of the special mitzvah of building a Sukkah and sitting in a Sukkah. And when you ask yourself, why do we sit in a Sukkah in Chag HaSukkot? Well, you open up the Torah and you see over there in the Psukim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Neman yedu derotechem ki basukot oshavti et bnei Yisrael, that the generations to come shall know that I set you down in Sukkot, and therefore you are sitting in your Sukkot. And first of all, we have to ask, looking at that pasuk, when did HaKadosh Baruch Hu put us in Sukkot? When did He sit us down in Sukkot? For what I know, for what I remember, Pesach is the time we celebrate leaving Egypt. So why are we sitting in Sukkot now and the beginning of the winter at the end of the summer? We should be sitting in Sukkot during Pesach time. If this is to remember going out of Mitzrayim and leaving Mitzrayim, then we should sit in the Sukkah then in Chag HaPesach. Why are we sitting in a Sukkah now? But also, when you look in the Gemara, trying to understand what do these sukkahs mean, there's a very big known machloket between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Akiva. What were these sukkahs? One of them says it was the actual sukkahs HaKadosh Baruch Hu made for us sukkahs to sit in, and one of them says the sukkahs were ananei kavod, were the clouds that followed us in the desert and made our lives so much easier and better in the desert. And again, you have to ask, what is this about? What are we talking about in the pasuk? Are we talking about actual sukkahs? Are we talking about something else? Did HaKadosh Baruch Hu really create for us sukkot and we sat in them? And in that case, again, why are we doing it now in Tishrei and not in Nisan? And you know, very interestingly, when you think about this concept of leaving Mitzrayim and sitting in Sukkot, this year, suddenly it popped out and suddenly I noticed that in the Psukim, we actually traveled to a place called Sukkot right after leaving Egypt. In these few little Psukim that many times you don't even notice because you can find them over there in between these big occasions, in between these big other Psukim and big other things that are happening, you don't notice these Psukim. But apparently, both in Sefer Shmot and in Sefer Bamidbar, it says that we left Egypt, we left Ramses, and we went to a place called Sukkot. And from that Sukkot, we moved on into this desert to start our journey in the desert. And when you think about it for a second, and you pay attention to the Psukim, you have to ask, hold on, we did end up in a place called Sukkot right after going out of Mitzrayim. So when you ask yourself, Ki basukot oshavti et bnei Yisrael, what is it talking about? Why don't we have an opinion saying that it's talking about the place Sukkot? Why don't we have an opinion that says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim to a place called Sukkot? It will make perfect sense if we say that because it says that in the Psukim in two different places. So, I know this is a very known Chag and we've been sitting in Sukkahs all our life until now, but seriously, we have to take a moment to understand what's going on over here. What are these Sukkahs about? Is it an actual Sukkah? Is it an anei kavod? Maybe it's a place called Sukkot that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us to right out of Mitzrayim. And on top of all, why are we doing it now in Tishrei and not when we eat the matzah in Nisan? Because that's when we left Mitzrayim. What is going on over here? HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to remember that He put us in Sukkot. So what are we supposed to remember? What are these Sukkot all about?
Well, on the one hand, yes, you can't ignore the fact that we leave Mitzrayim and go to Sukkot. But then, what does that mean? Why are we celebrating that? Never forget that the first place He went to was Sukkot. I think the way to really begin to understand this is to dive into those psukim of leaving Mitzrayim. And what's fascinating is that the pasuk that says, Vayis'u miRamses Sukkota, they go from Ramses in Egypt to Sukkot. That pasuk, as you mentioned, is sort of hidden in the middle of the description of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Right after that pasuk, we still have psukim sort of summarizing, and on that time, Am Yisrael left Egypt, and we already said that we already are in a new place. It's sort of hidden there in between. And what's also interesting is when we look in Chazal, where was this Sukkot? Every midrash describes it in a further place. It's far away, it's in a distant place, and they all come back to the pasuk where Hashem describes how He took us us out of Egypt, I lifted you up on the wings of an eagle. When I took you to Sukkot. It's the first place we get to. We get to right away, and for some reason it's far away. Obviously, this place, Sukkot, is much more than just a place. And a fascinating word that we see in Rashi when he describes this place, he points out, Sukkot lefi sha'ah. It was in the meantime. I don't understand. And the next place we went to, that wasn't in the meantime. It was in the meantime before we went to the place after that. We know we went through so many places. No. Sukkot, that's in the meantime. The Torah seems to make a point to clarify. Before I go on to tell you all different psukim about leaving Mitzrayim, I want you to know that when they left Egypt, they didn't just go into the wilderness. They didn't just go into the desert. They went to Sukkot. That's the first thing. There's no time between them. They flew on the wings of an eagle and they went right to Sukkot. What is the Torah trying to teach us here? And you know what's interesting is this isn't the only Sukkot. There's another place called Sukkot. Sukkot is the place that Yaakov Avinu gets to when he gets out of Esav. We escape Egypt and we go first to Sukkot. Yaakov escapes Esav, manages to overcome the challenge with Esav, and he gets to Sukkot. Later he'll go to Shechem, but in between he's in Sukkot. It seems like Sukkot in some way is this in-between stage, is this sort of temporary stage, and this begins to remind us a lot of different things about the concept of Sukkot. Sukkot being this temporary home. Something about it is lefi sha'ah, is in between. But what is the Torah telling us? What does it mean that we need to know that we were in Sukkot? And I think that we need to notice something very interesting. Every time we speak about Yetziat Mitzrayim, it's about the past. We have to remember, Leman tizkor et yom tzitcha me'eretz Mitzrayim. We have to remember things. For some reason, when we talk about sitting in the Sukkot, we don't need to remember we sat in Sukkot. We need to know that we sat in Sukkot. What does that mean? We know the concept of ladat is usually about you should know that Hashem is your God. You should know. It's about things in the present. It's not about an event that happened in the past. But maybe that's exactly the point. Maybe that's what Sukkot is about. Sukkot isn't about remembering an event in the past. That's why we don't do it when we do Pesach back in Pesach time. We're not about remembering that specific event. We're knowing, Leman yid'u dorotechem ki basukot hoshavti. When I took you out of Egypt, you didn't escape Egypt into nothingness. Now you're free. Do what you want. Not that. But also, you weren't taken out of Egypt and now you're put in your home and you're in your end goal and you can relax. No, you're put in the Sukkah. I think you're put in the Sukkah not back then. I think you're put back in the Sukkah from then until now and your whole life. Our whole life at some level is this Sukkah. We have to recognize that when Hashem took us out of Egypt, He didn't take us out of Egypt and that was all. He took us out of Egypt and settled us in the Sukkah, in this concept where on the one hand, we have that protection. Hashem protects us. We're out of Egypt. We're not in trouble anymore with all those pains, but we recognize where we are. We recognize it's temporary. Everything's temporary. It's because Hashem is protecting us. When you're at home, you don't always realize what's going on outside. But when you're in the Sukkah, you realize that the Sukkah is protecting you from the wind or from everything going on around you. You need to recognize that that's where Hashem put us. And if you notice carefully, you'll see that also with Yaakov. Yaakov has a discussion with Esav. Esav, by the way, who Chazal describe is made ready. Everything's done. It's completed by him. Asui. Esav says, let's go. Let's go together. And Yaakov says, no. You go. Ani et nahala leiti. I'm going to take time. I have a process. I'll get to you at some time. And as Chazal say, la'atid lavo. At some point we'll meet again. V'alu moshiim b'har Tzion. But now I'm on a journey. My life is a journey. My life is, and he goes right from there to Sukkah. So just after Yaakov comes with everything, is saved from Esav, he goes right away to the Sukkot before he moves on to recognize where he is. Also, we get all the rechush of Mitzrayim, but we right away, the pasuk after that, we go to be settled in Sukkot. From there, we can recognize what our purpose is in life and not forget who we are and who we need to be. Not about remembering the past, it's about recognizing the present.
Very good, very good. Like you're saying, remembering that Sukkot also connects to Yaakov Avinu, like we say, and like so many Pirushim and so many Midrashim connect Chag HaSukkot to Yaakov Avinu, all the way from the Midrashim, where 3 Chagim are connected 3 Avot. So Pesach, Avraham, Shavuos, Yitzchak, Sukkot says Yaakov. Yaakov Avinu was born and died on Chag HaSukkot. Sukkot is the Chag of Yaakov, and obviously, as we know in Sefer Bereshit, Yaakov came to the place Sukkot and built a house for himself, built a sukkah for his cattle. Rashi emphasizes he built both also for himself, not only for his cattle. unravel, and therefore so many Pirushim connect Chag HaSukkot to Yaakov Avinu. But also, when you look in the Psukim, and when you look at the story of Yaakov, in the context that it appears, just like you're saying, that this is happening right after meeting Esav, right after resolving the largest conflict he had in his life, the largest problem that started already even before he was born. This has been chasing him from his mother's womb. From the days before he was born, he was already in a conflict with Esav. And finally now this is being resolved. Then he gets to Sukkot. And we have to remember that Yaakov Avinu went on his journey to Lavan. When he started it off, he made a promise. He made a promise in the beginning of Parashat Vayetze, and he said, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives me everything I need, he gives me food, he gives me clothes, he watches over me, and that I will return in peace to my father's home, Veshavti Beshalom, these two words, Veshavti Beshalom El Beit Avi, then Vayya Hashem Li Le'Elokim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be my God. I will create a home for him, and everything he gives me, I will give a tenth to him. If we take that promise, if we take that neder, and we look at what's going on over here, when Yaakov arrives in Sukkot, it is now resolved. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took care of it. He gave him clothes, he gave him cattle, he gave him a family, he gave him wives, he gave him everything he needed. He saved him from Esav. Now it's time for Yaakov really to build that home, and then through that home recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and from everything he has, to give a tenth to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And by doing this, by on the one hand acknowledging that he has everything he needs, but on the other hand remembering and knowing that it's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, combining these two together, this is what helps him get to Shechem. Vayavo Yaakov Shalem Ir Shechem. This is Veshavti Beshalom El Beit Avi. This is the Shalem, this is the Shlemut, this is the peace, this is the completeness that Yaakov needs, the completeness that Yaakov represents, that allows him to be the Israel that starts off our nation, that we are Bnei Israel, that we are the sons of Israel. And this maybe is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is commanding us on Chag HaSukkot. Leman yadu dorotechem ki basukot hoshavti et Bnei Israel. Again, this word of hoshavti is to sit down, but it's also very, very similar to a different shorish. It's not the same root, but it's a very similar root of returning, of lashuv, what we've been doing for the past month plus of Chodesh Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, lashuv b'tshuva, to return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we do it at this time of the year, and then Chag HaSukkot at this time of the year, just like the Psukim continue over there in Sefer Vayikra to say, because this is the time when we collect everything from the field, when we collect all the produce from the field, and we look around at everything we have, and we look at what we've been through for the past year, from last winter through the summer, from that time when we planted the seeds, and we prayed for rain, and we worked so hard, and then the harvest, and then we took everything together. After all this, when we finally have everything collected, everything we need collected by us, Chag HaAsif, in the place, in the storage place where we want it, then we pause, we take a moment, we take a step back, and we remind ourselves, but not only reminding, like you were saying, not tizkeu, but yedu, in a knowing level, that all this is thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And even though we have everything we need now, even though we have everything we need, we collected everything, and it's sitting in our house, after all the hard work we've put into it, we can very easily get to that place and say to ourselves, oh, we have everything, and we can forget HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is what happens once you leave Mitzrayim. This is what happens many times once you leave your tzaros, once the problems are resolved, once the conflicts are resolved. You don't need HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help anymore. You know, like that famous joke about the person looking for parking, and then he says, God, just help me find parking. And once he finds, he says, oh, it doesn't matter. I don't need your help anymore. This is what happens many, many times. This is what Chag HaSukkot is about. When we get to that time of year, when we might think to ourselves that we have everything we need, and now we don't need HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help anymore, and we can turn around and say to ourselves, oh, from now on, it's just us. We don't need any extra help. This is when we go out to that temporary hut, to that temporary home, to remind ourselves that everything is temporary in this world. And this is also, like you were saying, when you look in the Psukim, when Am Yisrael got to Sukkot, this is all part of still of Yetziat Mitzrayim. They left Ramses straight to Sukkot. And again, very interestingly, if I ask you, why do we eat matzah on Pesach? You will say, oh, because the pasuk says, Lo yispik batzekam leachmitz, the dough didn't have enough time to become bread, therefore they had matzah. But if you look in the Psukim, that pasuk comes after the fact that they got to Sukkot. They first got to Sukkot. They left Mitzrayim and they got to Sukkot. Only after that do we learn that they had matzahs with them. So again, in terms of doing a mitzvah, supposedly Sukkah should be before the matzah, but this is the whole point. Understanding that once you leave Mitzrayim, that once you go out of Mitzrayim, you should not forget. Ki basukot hoshavti. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had us sit down in the Sukkot, but also HaKadosh Baruch Hu made us return in the Sukkot. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made us return in the Sukkot Sukkot to understanding that everything we have and everything that we've been through is because of Him and thanks to Him, and we should never forget that. And if we understand it correctly, if we understand that this is the way we have to live our lives, then we can leave Sukkot with that acknowledgement. Then once we leave Sukkot, as the Psukim continue over there in Parashat Beshalach, then we get Ananei HaKavod. Then right after we leave Sukkot, we get that Ananei HaKavod to go with us throughout the entire time in the desert. That Ananei HaKavod that Rabbi Elazar says were the Sukkot, are the reason for the Sukkot. Then also we can leave Sukkot like Yaakov Avinu, and from there get to Shechem, Ve'yavo Yaakov Shalem. We can get complete to Shechem, Shalem begufo, Shalem betorato, Shalem b'mamono, complete in everything, in all the aspects of our life. This is what Chag HaSukkot is now, that in the end of the summer, that when we have everything with us, if we remember and we remind ourselves continuously that everything we have is thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything we have is just temporary, and just because we have no conflicts in front of us at the moment, and remind ourselves that even though we're after Yom Kippur, after the Kapara, again, we might be complete in all the aspects of our life, and we might not have any conflicts to resolve. You should never forget that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there with you, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who gave you everything. And with this acknowledgement, you can start going back into that winter. We're ready to start a new year and start a new journey again, Bezrat Hashem, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So based on this, the timing is because it's Chag HaAsif, and Chag HaAsif in Mitzrayim was the moment that they turned to the Egyptians and came out with the Rechush Gadol. That was their Chag HaAsif. And as we mentioned, that's the pasuk that goes right before they go to Sukkot. Just as they collect all the things, all the possessions from the Egyptians, and they, for the first time in their life, have their own possession. That's their Chag HaAsif. On that Chag HaAsif, they right away go to Sukkot, because only if they go from Chag HaAsif to Sukkot can they really begin the journey of their life. And you know, many midrashim describe this traveling to Sukkot as Vaisayitchem el kanfei nesharim, and I took you up on the wings of an eagle. But what's the continuation of that pasuk? Where did you go on the wings of an eagle? Va'avi etchem elai, and I brought you to me. That's exactly the point. You know what brought you to me is? I brought you to Sukkot. In this temporary Sukkah, feeling HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence, being comfortable with that, knowing that this is our life. Our life isn't necessarily the bite that we're used to. It's actually always this Sukkah.
Very good, very good. Wonderful. We're out of time, so we'll end here, but we have discussed Sukkah so many times in the past. One video we discussed Kohelet. We'll link that video. Also, there are many more videos about Sukkah on our channel. Make sure to take a look. There's so much to talk about Sukkot. Also on this specific topic of the Sukkot themselves. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to share it around. Comment below on YouTube. Let us know what you liked or what you didn't like. And of course, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing and help us grow this channel. And Shkoyach Yetzi.
Shkoyach Tuvia. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Shabbat Shalom. And Hashem. We'll talk again next week. Simchat Torah.